During the Black Lives Matter riots of 2020, the American people were broadly exposed to a series of organizations that seek to undermine our criminal justice process in the name of reform. One of the most famous examples of this was current Vice President, then Senator of California Kamala Harris, actually tweeting out the Minnesota Bail Fund so that average everyday Americans could bail out Black Lives Matter rioters who were being arrested for their crimes during that historic destructive event in our country. But the thing is, these organizations have not gone away. If you're in a place that can't pass a statewide bail reform law like New York or Illinois, these organizations exist to bail out some of your most dangerous criminals. And today's story is a reminder of how dangerous this can actually be and how there's no real accountability for bailing somebody out with this out-of-state money, even when that person commits the ultimate crime, which is a murder, after they're let go. And that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we do, this video is sponsored, so I'm going to frisbee toss it to the sponsor, then I'll bring it back over here, and we'll talk about it on the other side. It will be epic. Come back on the other side. I dare you. The U.S. national debt spike could mean a long-term boom for gold. Since March of 2020, the federal government has added $8 trillion, that's trillion with the T, to the national debt, and now interest payments on that debt supersede $1 trillion. On top of that, we have international organizations like BRICS and oil-rich nations meeting and having discussions about potentially moving away from the petrodollar. This could spell an absolute disaster and economic hardship for Americans for years to come. This is one of the reasons why I'm so happy to be partnering with National Gold Group. You can help secure your investments by backing up your retirement with precious metals. Buying gold and silver is a strategic hedge against potential future disaster, and especially when we're in a nation where 51% of Americans can't pay their credit cards, and the Build Back Better spending agenda is supposed to raise the national debt all the way through the year of 2024. Do yourself a favor and call National Gold Group at 866-826-2603 so that you can talk over your options. Make sure you mention the channel Actual Justice Warrior so that they know that I sent you. Again, that number is 866-826-2603. Call them and learn about protecting your investments today. There is always a risk with any investments, and prior performance is not a guarantee of future results.
An out-of-state bail reform organization is now in the spotlight following its actions in helping free a man from jail who's now accused of killing a man in Clayton.
Fox Files investigator Chris Hayes discovered it's not the first time an out-of-town group without St. Louis ties freed a criminal suspect prior to a reported repeat of violence.
So this story actually revolves around 18-year-old Tronell Johnson. Tronell Johnson is now currently the suspect in this Clayton murder, but let's talk about the crime that he was arrested on previously to understand what a critical error the bail project made in bailing this person out. So first and foremost, Johnson was accused of a grand theft auto. He was actually pulled over by the police.
Monday morning's Clayton murder solved, police and prosecutors say, with 18-year-old Tronell Johnson in custody.
Court records say he was already in custody for allegedly stealing a car, leading police on a pursuit.
Wait, scratch that. They intended to pull him over. However, he decided to lead them on a pursuit. And of course, this was a dangerous police chase.
And using his gun to threaten an officer.
On top of that, when the police eventually were able to stop the vehicle, Johnson threatened officers with a firearm that possibly he used in connection with other crimes, and that's why he was arrested and initially put up on a significant bond. Now, upon request from his defense team, he asked for a bail reduction, and that bail reduction was in fact granted. In fact, the bail amount that was asked for was around $3,000, but according to the reporting, this was still too much money for Johnson or his family or anybody who presumably would have cared about him to pay in order to get him out of jail. And remember, you also have the option of a bail bondsman, but again, according to the reporting, even that 10%, which would have been in and around $300. Some places charge 10% and some fees. Some places charge 12%, fees included, was too much for anyone to put up. Well, guess what? This is when the bail project comes in.
Then court records say he was freed because an organization called the Bail Project paid $3,000 to get him out.
They paid the full $3,000 for his release, and he was released with ankle monitoring.
The Bail Project, based in Southern California, claims to have freed 23,745 people since 2019. Has an advisory board with big names like John Legend and Danny Glover. St. Louis County Prosecutor Wesley Bell had this to say.
I think overall, I think they do good work. But no system is going to be perfect.
So there you have the District Attorney Wesley Bell, who is, of course, defending the Bail Project because he is one of these woke left-wing district attorneys. You guys might remember him as somebody who ran on the promise of reopening the Michael Brown case, investigated the Michael Brown case, found out that Michael Brown was 100% guilty, the Ferguson lie was just that, and then refused to release the results of that investigation and ended up getting shouted down by woke leftists who still believe in the myth of Michael Brown. So it's not surprising that this utter doofus would end up defending the organization that just freed a killer for him to kill under his jurisdiction, under his watch.
The Bail Project also answered me in writing, saying, quote, bail is set by judges as a condition of release, not as a punishment or method to detain. After considering all the available information, the judge saw fit to reduce the original bond and order electronic monitoring as an additional condition of release. Mr. Johnson's family could not afford the bail themselves or the hiring of a bail bonds company. At that point, the Bail Project provided bail assistance to the 18-year-old, partly in recognition of his young age and responsibilities as a father.
Now look, I don't know anything about Johnson, and to be clear, even though they showed me some grainy surveillance video that supposedly ties him to the murder that he's accused of.
Monday morning's Clayton murder solved, police and prosecutors say, with 18-year-old Trinell Johnson in custody.
This is all alleged at this point, and since he hasn't even been convicted of the Grand Theft Auto, of leading police on a pursuit, of threatening the officers with a firearm, that is also alleged. But if I'm examining the circumstances of this particular case, if I'm seeing an 18-year-old armed with a weapon, committing a felony Grand Theft Auto, fleeing from the police, threatening the police with a firearm, to me, that screams dangerous individual. The fact that he fathered a child, which is unfortunate for that child and for our society as a whole, does not factor into my assessment of dangerousness. The fact that he is 18 years old, which by the way is right in the middle of the peak offending years of a young male criminal, does not factor in positively in my assessment of dangerousness. However, the Bail Project, which is based in Southern California, has decided that that is a factor. They wanted to let him out, and of course, you notice from their statement, they're shifting blame to the judge.
Bail is set by judges as a condition of release, not as a punishment or method to detain. After considering all the available information, the judge saw fit to reduce the original bond and order electronic monitoring.
And there is some blame for the judge in reducing the bond amount because, you know, why take any accountability for any action? You freed a person, he murdered somebody, allegedly, but there is surveillance video to back this up. And you don't want to take any accountability for those actions. In fact, even the prosecutor doesn't want you to take any accountability for those actions, which just goes to show you that the prosecutor should not be in office.
Out-of-towners intervening on St. Louis criminal cases is not new. We reported extensively in the Fox Files about cases during the Ferguson uprisings. Like this August 2015 shooting that made national news. Tyrone Harris Jr. is currently in prison for the shooting after pleading guilty. Fox 2 found out before this gunfight, he'd been bonded out on a different felony charge by a bail reform group called MORE.
And by the way, credit to this local Fox affiliate for tracking down these other cases to show that these organizations participate in a pattern of behavior that has poor assessment of character that has led to serious crimes. Another shooting, another person trying to kill somebody during the Ferguson riots was bailed out by an out-of-town organization, this time called MORE, before he pled guilty ultimately to this shooting, which is caught on video, caught dead to rights, that you can see for yourselves. And if you think that is the extent of it, you're dead wrong, because they got another case, and again, this is just from the county that they're referring to for these particular segments. Remember, the Bail Project said they bailed out 24,000 people nationwide over the past 3 years, so one can only imagine the damage done by these people that were released by this organization that seeks to undermine our criminal justice system.
Then we learned Josh Williams, seen here pouring fuel and lighting fires at a Quick Trip, had also been bonded out by the group MORE. Williams is also currently in prison after pleading guilty.
And there you have an arsonist, also from the Ferguson riots, also in prison right now after pleading guilty, also caught on crime for setting these fires, who also happen to be released by this organization. So these groups have been around for a long time. You might not have heard of them up until Kamala Harris ended up tweeting out in support for them, supporting the raising money to bail out Black Lives Matter rioters, but they've been in the background this whole time pushing for these policies, letting these criminals out, and we've had incident after incident, and again, this is just limited to Clayton County, this local news segment. It's a nationwide problem of these people who were violent felons being bailed out and committing other additional crimes, more violent in scale, that ultimately could lead to the death or did lead to the death of other individuals. It's absolutely heinous what these groups do, and how when something goes down, they completely wash their hands of any responsibility. Remember, when you put up money for bail, even if you're a family member, you have some responsibility, especially if you go through a bail bondsman or through the court system because you want your bail money back, to ensure some level of good behavior and some level of compliance with the system. These organizations take no such responsibility, have no such personal stake, and then when somebody dies, they're nowhere to be found. They release a generic statement, they blame the judge, and they say, "Sad day for you, innocent person who was murdered by the person that they released." There's nothing that they could have done except for maybe bail out the murderer again so he could offend again.
It's forcing law enforcement and security companies like us to work harder and almost going backwards.
Veteran security officer Mike Dwyer works for Praetorian Guard Services, founded by a veteran police officer.
Violent offenders or people that have flourished weapons or threatened police officers, those guys shouldn't get very much assistance.
I like how they have to seek out a specific expert, somebody who works with a veteran police officer on a security team, to state the most obvious thing. Somebody with a pattern of violent behavior being released means the police have to work extra hard in order to get the same person off the street. Somebody with a pattern of violent behavior, the use of a weapon in a crime, threatening the police with a firearm, probably shouldn't get assistance from these out-of-state organizations because they've proven themselves to be dangerous. All of this should be obvious, all of this should be logical, yet it needs to be said because organizations like the Bail Project go out of their way to help these dangerous criminals, and they don't give a damn about the consequences.
Ferguson's police chief, Troy Doyle, also provided me a comment today, which said in part, quote, "While initiatives like the Bail Project serve a significant purpose in aiding those unable to afford bail, we must also focus on advocating for the victims of crime. Our approach to bail decisions needs to reflect a balance where the safety and well-being of the community and the rights of the victims are held in high regard."
So they interviewed the Ferguson police chief, and he gives a pretty neutral statement, although again, it goes in the category of common sense. We should think about the victims, we should think about the community, the potential future victims in the community when making these decisions. I don't agree with him on the value of organizations like the Bail Project. If they're not going to assess dangerousness in their own capacity, then obviously they are not responsible in the way that they're using people's money, and that should be quite notable whenever we're discussing these kind of things. Now, we leave off with a pledge from this local Fox affiliate, the St. Louis Fox 2.
Count on us to follow up to see what other cases may be impacted.
And you best believe that I will also be keeping track of cases of people bailed out by these organizations that were obviously dangerous, that obviously should have been held in custody when they re-offend again. We have to keep track of this. We have to notice what's going on in our society. And we have to know, even in situations where you have a Wesley Bell, a woke district attorney who doesn't want to prosecute anyone, that sometimes he is not the problem in that situation. Sometimes it's a statewide law. Sometimes it's a particular mayor. Sometimes it's an ideology that has taken root in another form of the government. And sometimes, like in this situation, it's a nonprofit organization that has way too much money, has no accountability, nobody expects them to be held accountable, that just does whatever they want and lets you, the average ordinary person, live with the consequences. So yeah, we'll keep track of this, we'll update on this, but I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you liked the video, then show me by leaving a like. Subscribe for more content, follow me on my social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the Bail Project freeing a killer. Till next time.